Hi everyone, hope you guys are all doing great. About a week ago I put up a video just explaining that I'm gonna do a 52 Star Wars books in 52 weeks challenge, and I also announced that the first book that I was gonna read was Heir to the Empire by Zahn, and I've made it through that book. I actually sat down and read it in about 3 days. It was a really great book, and what I'll do is I'll just talk a little bit about it. I'm not going to make this video too long, just because it's just myself and I don't think that a book review with just one person talking is all that exciting. But I'll just try to tell you guys what I liked about it, and I really didn't dislike anything about it, so it's just basically going to be me gushing about the book for a few minutes here, and if you guys want, since I'm going to try to keep the spoilers to a minimum in the actual review, I will open up the comment section though for spoilers, so if you haven't read the book, listening to this shouldn't be too bad, although I will talk about a little bit of spoilers, but definitely avoid the comments because we'll try to get some discussion going about the book in the comments. But if you don't know, Heir to the Empire was written in 1991 by Zahn, and it was written at a time when I guess there weren't too many Star Wars books out at the moment, and it really is a book that people attribute to not really saving Star Wars. Again, Star Wars didn't really need saving at the time, but there wasn't a lot of new Star Wars materials out there, and the books really did a great job of kind of rekindling the passion for Star Wars at the time. And when it was written, what Zahn did is he based the book 5 years after the events of Return of the Jedi, which I think was a great idea. And pretty much what I'll do is just start talking about some of the surprises that I found when reading it. You start off the book with the New Republic trying to set up a new government, again a intergalactic government as it is. And one of the surprises that I had, and I think from some of the reviews that I've read, quite a bit of people were surprised by this, but with the events of Return of the Jedi, I know that I was at least. When you end with Return of the Jedi, you just kind of assume that everyone rides off into the sun, and with the Emperor dead, the New Republic is just set up quite easily by the rebels. But with this book here, Heir to the Empire, it doesn't quite work that way. The galaxy really isn't saved, and there is still a remnant of the Empire, and that remnant is led by Grand Admiral Thrawn. And Grand Admiral Thrawn was definitely my favorite character in the book. As I was reading it, I couldn't help but think of Gustavo Fring from Breaking Bad, and some of the similarities between those characters was Grand Admiral Thrawn really used intelligence and cunning and was just a great antagonist for those reasons. It was really something different than has been seen in Star Wars. Obviously all of the evil bad characters really use the Force and are kind of aided in their actions through the Force, but Grand Admiral Thrawn, he wasn't a Force sensitive being, and he had to use just pure intelligence and kind of cunning to outmaneuver what becomes of the New Republic. One of the really interesting things that I thought that Zahn did a great job of was he set up the fact that Grand Admiral Thrawn, what he did to learn about the characteristics of his enemies was he studied their art, and through the art he was able to understand their culture. And by understanding the culture, he was also able to gather what type of moves that they would make in battle. And the first chapter opens up with a small skirmish with Grand Admiral Thrawn at the helm, and it really was a great job. He was always one step ahead of his kind of co-captain, Captain Pelion, who was also a really good character, I found. But, you know, I loved Grand Admiral Thrawn. He's a really great character, and just to read about him is reason enough to read this book, Heir to the Empire. Just another surprise, I was also surprised that, you know, Luke and Leia aren't really super powerful Jedis at this moment. In fact, I was kind of struggling to see how Luke had expanded from Return of the Jedi. He's really not that much more powerful, at least in the scenes that I saw. He definitely was working on his Jedi talents in between the 5 years of Return of the Jedi and Heir to the Empire. But, you know, he really wasn't the type of Jedi that I was expecting when I first sat down to read this book. And Leia was pretty much non-existent. She was just in the stages of learning. Luke was probably just about to teach her. She didn't even have a lightsaber yet. So I found those surprising. Another great character that Timothy Zahn created for this book was Talon Karrde. And basically he was a smuggler like Han Solo. And I wouldn't say that he had a heart of gold, but he was definitely an individual who knew that in the world of smuggling, your reputation is what matters. So he was a really interesting character just for the reason that he was always being pulled in different directions between Han Solo and Lando and Luke Skywalker, and then Grand Admiral Thrawn on the other side. So I really like the development of Talon Karrde. With the other two books in the Thrawn trilogy, I'm really looking forward to see how his character plays out. Also too, there was a new character called Mara Jade, and the introduction that Timothy Zahn gives to Mara Jade, you don't know that it's her at the beginning, but what happens, Luke Skywalker goes back to Dagobah to try to... He was a little bit conflicted at the beginning, so to try to settle himself, he goes back to Dagobah to try to hopefully find whatever it is he's looking for. And he goes back into the cave, where in The Empire Strikes Back, he ends up battling what looked like Darth Vader, but then after he cut his head off, it turned out to be him. And he went back into the cave in Heir to the Empire, and he saw another vision, but this one was on Jabba the Hutt's sail barge. It was basically just the scene from Return of the Jedi, and in Return of the Jedi, if you remember, R2 kind of hides Luke Skywalker's lightsaber, and then launches it in the air to help them escape, and bring down Jabba the Hutt. But in this one here, he has a vision, and instead of the lightsaber going into his hand and being able to free himself, this woman, who he doesn't recognize, actually catches it, and then it just turns out to the fact that he couldn't free himself, and it pretty much ends there. But anyway, that turns out to be Mara Jade, and again, too, just a little bit of a spoiler here, she turns out to be the Emperor's hand at the time of Return of the Jedi, and she had been, actually, it turns out she was actually in Jabba's palace as an assassin to try to bring down Luke Skywalker on behalf of the Emperor. And I thought that was a great touch. I mean, Timothy Zahn, what a character to think of, again, too, just to be able to bring that conflict. And of course, she has a bunch of hatred for Luke Skywalker, just because she had earned a good reputation as being the Emperor's hand, and after the Emperor dies and after the events of Return of the Jedi, she basically is left to nothing. But again, some of the best scenes that I actually enjoyed in this novel were the ones where Mara Jade and Luke Skywalker were together. I just liked the different contrasts and them having, it's kind of a classic sort of use in books, where the classic device where you put the two characters that hate each other the most together. So again, I really enjoyed the Mara Jade scenes, and again too, just like the Talon Karrde, I'm interested to see what happens next. Again too, I have browsed Wikipedia in the past, so I do know a little bit about what happens to her. Again, I won't spoil it, because it is a pretty big spoiler. Another part that I really enjoyed about this book, just going back to the surprise about the New Republic struggling to actually gain a foothold, there was really good political, sort of what I just contrasted as political intrigue. Again, Mon Mothma and Admiral Akbar are actually in the book. Again, two characters we recognize from Return of the Jedi. So they're trying to set up the New Republic, but then there's a third character named Phalia, Borsk Phalia, who's a Bothan, and I guess he doesn't get along with Akbar. I think the way that it goes is he's quite suspicious of Akbar, but again, I'm hoping that it plays out a little bit more in the second novels, which I'm sure that it will. And again, too, just the political intrigue, I'm really looking forward to see what happens with the infighting in the future books as well. Now, the best part of this Heir to the Empire novel that I found, again, too, it has all the characters in Star Wars that you recognize. Again, Luke, Han, Lando, 3PO, R2, even Wedge. Again, too, for all the Wedge fans out there. And again, too, Timothy Zahn really, he kind of nails exactly those characters, their tendencies, which from some of the other Star Wars books that I've read, it's not the best writing between the characters. For example, in this book here, there's a lot of Luke and R2 together, and you could have taken and written those scenes, and they really could have filled in and really reminded me a lot about the Luke and R2 scenes from Empire Strikes Back. So again, those were great. The Han and Lando scenes I really enjoyed as well. And not only did Timothy Zahn nail the characters in Heir to the Empire, I really found that he just nailed the entire Star Wars universe. And even too, just the way that Star Wars is told going back to A New Hope. Again, the pacing was great. There was a lot of quick scene changes, which again I really liked. There was always the kind of ebb and flow where there was a lot of action followed up by a building to action, and again just quick scene changes and great pacing throughout the novel. Finally, again too, just a couple of areas that, you know, I didn't have a problem with them, but again I hope that they're expanded on a little bit more. Just another new character, and again this was another great touch. What happens is Grand Admiral Thrawn is looking for, I believe it's the Emperor Palpatine's sort of stash of weapons that he put away. It was on a planet named Wayland, and to find that he had to go through what turns out to be a clone, which is actually a Dark Jedi clone, and his name is Joreth Sabath. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But basically he's the protector of the cave, and what happens is Grand Admiral Thrawn kind of works out a deal where for his help, again to his Jedi abilities, he'll kind of give up Leia, and I think he wants Luke as well, I'm pretty sure he does. But also too, Leia's pregnant with twins, and in return for helping Grand Admiral Thrawn, then Joreth Sabath will be able to have Leia and the twins and be able to train them as he sees fit. And he was a great character, but I hope that they expand on him a little bit more. He kind of disappeared towards the middle of the book, and I hope that they explain a little bit more. It was cool that he was a clone, just because it does kind of nail back all the way to the Clone Wars and just the whole cloning aspect of Star Wars. But again, I hope that they explained, it turned out that he used to be a Jedi, or at least there was a Jedi named Joreth Sabath who died just before the Clone Wars. So I'm hoping to see a little bit more. Again too, I'm pretty sure he'll be quite a central figure in the next two novels. Also too, there's these, I guess I would describe them as, I guess they kind of shut off the Force is the best way that I would describe them. I believe they're pronounced the E-Salamiri, or E-Salamir. I hope I'm saying that right, but whatever they are, they're animals which basically, if a Jedi or any Force-sensitive being is around them, they're unable to tap into the Force and use the Force. Again, I didn't really, just because that kind of jumps out of nowhere, it was a really cool idea, and it's probably an answer to the fact that Grand Admiral Thrawn is not a Force-sensitive being himself, but it also too just is a really good introduction to a plot device for Grand Admiral Thrawn, just because he knows that there are Jedi out there and he's going to have to stop their powers in some way. So these animals are a great way to do that. And also too, before I go on to just kind of ending this review, there's great scenes between Grand Admiral Thrawn and Captain Pelion, where it turns out that Grand Admiral Thrawn isn't at the Battle of Endor in Return of the Jedi, and Captain Pelion, on a number of occasions, at the beginning of the book and at the end, he always kind of thinks to himself about, well, I wonder what would happen if Grand Admiral Thrawn had been, you know, in charge of the Imperial fleet in the Battle of Endor, rather than Darth Vader. And I just thought that that was a really good theme, and Timothy Zahn pushes it twice, and it ties in nicely to Return of the Jedi, just because, as we know, Darth Vader wasn't focused on the Imperial fleet, neither was the Emperor. And again, just to see just the contrast to Darth Vader and this Grand Admiral Thrawn, it was a really good way to kind of bring up Grand Admiral Thrawn to the level of a Darth Vader, and even surpassing him just in a military tactician point of view. But yeah, just to end this, again, everyone always says, I've read tons of reviews and heard a lot of videos on YouTube, just kind of saying that this is a must-read book, and I have to agree. Again, Timothy Zahn nails the pacing, again, too, nails all of the characters, and I won't give away the end, again, too, but where you leave off, I'm definitely going to have to read the next 2 books. On the 52-week challenge, I did start, and in fact, too, I have already read The Old Republic Revan by Drew Karpyshyn. I just wanted to kind of jump into a different era, and also, too, I've been a big fan of The Old Republic, just that era in general. I've already read the Darth Bane trilogy. But again, too, I've read that already, and it's a good thing, too, because I have to jump right back into the second book of the Thrawn trilogy, called Dark Force Rising. So again, I'll come out with a quick review and rundown of Revan, which, you know, I'll just say that I enjoyed. Not as much as this book, but after I do the book review for Revan, then again, I'm going to do the 3rd book, which will be Dark Force Rising. So again, really looking forward to see how this trilogy plays out with the 2nd installment. And again, too, as I mentioned, definitely a must-read. I'm not going to give it a rating, just because if it's Star Wars, I'm going to enjoy it. But this one definitely is a must-read for any Star Wars fan. And in fact, I would even suggest this book to people who aren't Star Wars fans, just because it is that good. But again, I hope that you all enjoyed this review. If you want to leave a comment, like I said, go ahead, let me know what you thought of the book. I'd definitely be happy to discuss it and to hear what you thought. But again, that's it for this book review. Definitely enjoyed Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn, and my next review will hopefully be in a couple of days. It's going to be The Old Republic Revan by Drew Karpyshyn. But thanks a lot, guys. That's it for now, and I'll see you next video.